Welcome to our YouTube channel. In today's episode, we're going to talk about each and every type of nut. Let's jump right in. Let's start with almonds, one of the most widely consumed nuts. Almonds are classified as drupes, which are fruits with an outer fleshy part and a hard shell enclosing a seed. In the case of almonds, the seed is what we commonly refer to as the nut. The almond is cultivated in many Mediterranean-type climates. There are two types: bitter almonds, which are not eaten but provide oils and extracts used for flavoring cakes and confectionery, such as amaretti biscuits, as well as amaretto di Serrano liqueur, and sweet almonds, which are wonderfully versatile for both sweet and savory cooking. Sweet almonds have a delicate yet distinctive flavor. Next up, we have cashews, another nut with an interesting structure. Cashews belong to the family Anacardiaceae, and unlike other nuts, their nut is actually a seed that grows outside of the fruit. The cashew apple, which is edible but less common, develops on the same tree. As the cashew nut is difficult to extract from its hard shell, and the shell contains powerful irritant substances, the nut is commonly sold shelled. Cashews have a mild, nutty flavor and a tender texture. Native to South America, the cashew tree was introduced to India by the Portuguese and is now grown in many other tropical parts of the world, including Africa, Central America, and the West Indies. Next, macadamias. Native to Australia, the macadamia tree is now cultivated in other countries, including Hawaii and South Africa, a rare example of a native Australian plant becoming a worldwide commercial food crop. Inside its thick, hard shell, the nut has a waxy texture and a buttery, sweet taste. Candlenuts, widely grown throughout tropical regions, from India to the Pacific Islands, are so named because they were historically used as rudimentary lights. Their very high oil content means they burn readily. These soft, cream-colored, rounded nuts have a notably waxy texture and a distinctive bitter flavor. Next up, we have peanuts. This seed of a plant in the legume family originated in Central and South America, but is now cultivated in many countries, including China, Indonesia, North America, and Nigeria. Because peanuts grow underground, they are also known as groundnuts and earth nuts. Each wrinkled shell contains 1 to 4 peanuts, individually wrapped in a thin, papery skin. Hazelnuts, also known as filberts, have their own fascinating characteristics. Over 100 varieties of hazelnut are cultivated in many temperate countries, with Turkey being the world's largest producer. The rounded nut, which may also be called cobnut or filbert, has a sweet flavor and a pleasantly crunchy texture. Fresh green hazelnuts are juicier and milder in taste than mature, ripe hazelnuts. Moving on to pistachios, these vibrant nuts have some unique characteristics as well. Pistachios are seeds enclosed in a hard shell that splits open when the nuts mature. This natural cracking process is called dehiscence. The distinctive green and slightly open shells indicate that the pistachios are ripe and ready to be enjoyed. The wild pistachio tree is indigenous to the Middle East. For centuries, the Iranians have prized pistachios and cultivated the trees for the valued nuts. Today, the pistachio is also grown commercially in other temperate countries. Chestnuts, long valued for its edible seeds, nuts, the sweet chestnut tree has been cultivated for centuries. There are many varieties grown in temperate climates around the world. Inside its protective, prickly casing, the chestnut itself is a rounded, glossy brown nut with a rich, sweetly nutty flavor and starchy texture. The pine nuts. There are various species of pine trees growing in warm, temperate regions that yield these delicious nuts, including the stone pine in Europe, the Korean pine in China, Japan, and Korea, and the piñón in North America and Mexico. Being time-consuming to harvest from the scales of pine cones, the nuts, also called pine kernels and pignolia, are costly to buy. But with their delicate, subtle, sweet flavor and soft, oily texture, they are much appreciated by cooks everywhere. Next up, we have pecans. This Native American nut is cultivated commercially in temperate climates, primarily in the U.S. Unlike its close relative, the walnut, pecans have thin, smooth, hard shells. But like the walnut, the nut itself comes in 2 halves. The flavor is mild, buttery, and sweet, and the texture is delightfully tender. Tiger nuts, despite their name, are actually a small, edible tuber, borne by the tiger nut sedge, which is grown in southern Europe and parts of Africa. When dried, the brown, wrinkled nuts, which are called chufa in Spain, have a mild, sweet, nutty flavor and a nut-like texture. Ginko nuts, which grow on the ginkgo tree, are much enjoyed in China, Japan, and Korea. Notoriously, the female fruit, which contains the edible nut, has a pungent, disagreeable smell. The nuts themselves smell pleasant and have a mild, nutty, slightly sweet flavor. Now let's explore the intriguing anatomy of walnuts. Walnuts are known for their convoluted shape, which resembles a miniature brain. The outer shell is hard, while the inner part, known as the kernel, is the edible portion we consume. Growing in temperate regions around the world, the many species of walnut tree have long been valued for their delicious nuts. Walnuts may be picked when young, called green or wet, but most are left on the tree to ripen. Green or wet walnut. When young, the entire nut, including the skin that will become the shell, is edible once pickled or preserved. Unripe green nuts are too sour to eat fresh, so they are normally pickled in a spiced vinegar. Black walnut. The tough-shelled American black walnut is noted for its excellent flavor. As its texture is somewhat oily, it is a good choice for cakes and cookies. Sorrento walnut. This Italian variety with a smooth shell has a pleasant flavor. It is widely used in commercial confectionery because the nut can easily be extracted whole from the shell. English walnut. Also known as the Persian or European walnut, this is widely cultivated and is delicious in all kinds of sweet and savory cooking. Moving on to lotus nuts, the edible seeds, or nuts, from the flowers of the exotic lotus plant have long been eaten in Asia. Today, China is the world's major producer. The nuts are usually sold dried and cored to remove their bitter green germ, either with their brown membrane attached or without it to reveal the pale nut. Their flavor is mild, sweet, and nutty. Last but not least, let's unravel the mysteries of Brazil nuts. Native to South America, the Brazil nut is the seed of a tall tree that grows in the Amazon rainforest and can live for over 500 years. The tree has not been successfully cultivated commercially, and the nuts are gathered mainly from the wild in Brazil and Bolivia for export. Brazil nuts are actually seeds that grow inside a large woody capsule. This capsule contains multiple individual seeds, which we commonly refer to as Brazil nuts. Interestingly, Brazil nuts are dependent on a specific species of bee for pollination, making them a unique example of nature's intricate relationships. The creamy white, waxy textured nuts have a mild, sweet flavor. Well, there you have it, the fascinating food science behind different types of nuts. From the classification of almonds as drupes to the intriguing dehiscence of pistachios, each nut presents its own story.